رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: فمن ثقلت موازينه فأولئك هم المفلحون ومن خفت موازينه فأولئك الذين خسروا أنفسهم في جهنم خالدون. In the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful, master of all the worlds, creator of the heavens and the earth. Just going with a recap from last night with what we discussed. Last night's topic was building an Islamic identity. And a summary is needed so that we can use this as a continuation going forward. Last night we realized and we talked about how ever since we grow up as a child, we realize that we do things differently to Western society. I, as a Muslim growing up in the West, do things differently. Like, for example, I don't celebrate Christmas, but I see my friend, whose name might be Harry, for example, he celebrates Christmas. Then I begin to wonder, why is it that I don't celebrate it and he does? And this trend we mentioned is a linear trend where it goes all the way throughout our adulthood, where you realize throughout the ages you are doing things where your friends are not doing, or your friends are doing things which you are not doing. So then we begin to question ourselves, because as you grow up in teenager, you become more social. You get into that dating lifestyle, you want to engage with the opposite gender, you want to get out, you want to party. This is part of the Western lifestyle. So when your mom and dad tells you that you're not allowed to do that, you begin to question yourself. And you begin to question the fact that, why can't I do such a thing? And when I, for example, look at other things, when I grow up and I go to university, we realize that you've got that drugs and substance abuse and that kind of lifestyle as well. Where almost after every lecture, you're going out trying to get wasted. But then you realize that theoretically, at least, that's not the best thing to do. So the question is always trying to be posed at the back of your head: where am I? What is my purpose? Or what is my identity? And then we also discussed that the types of identities that people identify. You had, for example, people who identify with their ethnicity. This could be Afghani, this could be Arab, this could be Iraqi, whatever it might be. You could have, for example, an identity through your name. You could be a Ja'fari, you could be a Rizai, you could be a Abbasi. This is through your last name. Then, for example, you had through your profession. You could be a doctor, you could be an engineer, you could be a barber, cutting people's hair, you could be an athlete. So you identify as a person based on your profession. And what we also talked about is how our identity automatically is in line with what we do. When we gave the example last night where your friend is a night owl, the moment you label your friend a night owl, automatically you think the guy is going to stay up all night. Or if you call your friend an early bird, then automatically your friend is going to wake up early, which means that the label of identity you give a person, there are certain actions or conduct or behavior linked to that identity. And we looked at the analogy of, for example, taking your garbage out and your mom tells you to take it out and you don't listen to her. Later on it's nighttime, you want to take it out, and then as you're going to that driveway, there's a rustling into that bush. Inside that bush, there's a rustling sound, but you don't know what's in that bush until you determine the identity of that bush or what's rustling in that bush. Your reaction is completely different. If you consider in that bush that it's a snake, then you're hitting the gears and you're running away. If in the rustling of that bush it's a rabbit, then you know you're going to ignore it because it can't harm you. So determining the identity of that particular rustling in that bush is fundamental. Likewise, you have to be able to determine your identity. Look at yourself and ask yourself the question, what's my identity? Islam gives an interesting approach. It says that your identity, the answer is quite humbling. The answer is that you are a servant obeying the master. That is your most foundational identity. And we discussed this last night. Where you are a servant who owns nothing. You are obeying or worshipping the master who owns everything. In this case, God. And many people, this is a hard pill to swallow because to them, they can't grasp the idea of being a servant. Nobody wants to be called a servant. Yes? When you call someone a servant, they'll be like, how dare you call me a servant? I'm not serving anyone, I'm free. I am that guy. I don't serve anybody. But then you realize that Islam tells you that your identity is merely a servant. You don't own anything. This whole cars, this house that I have, or this, properties that I live, they're not yours. Your eyes are not yours. Your ears are not yours. They were given to you by the person or the being which created you. And this is what we are trying to explore, inshallah, tonight. And we discussed also your origin story, where you came from a drop of fluid. Yes? The Quran seeks to remind the human being as to where their origin story was. You came from a drop of fluid, a splurting or like a gushing fluid. And then Imam Ali talks about how you were completely clueless, you were moving around into the darkness of the womb of your mother, not knowing what was going on. You could not hear, nor could you speak. So it's trying to remind you that next time you say, I have this, and I am this, and I am that, and I am that, have a look at your origin story and see how weak you truly were. You were a being where Islamic philosophers, they call a mumkin. Mumkin means that you're so dependent on a thing where if that other thing doesn't exist, you don't exist because you're dependent. If your heart needs pumping, you need someone to pump your heart. If you need ears to listen, you need someone to actually activate those radioactive waves or those waves of sound for you to hear. If you need to breathe, you need lungs, and that's been given to you. So notice we always look at this and say that it is always the master that's given everything to the servant. And we looked at how when we forget Allah and what makes a person forget Allah. And the Quran labels the person who forgets Allah as the one who forgets themselves. Why? Because a person who forgets God, you're basically forgetting your very own existence. Without God, you did not exist. So if you forget God, automatically if you do the equation, you don't exist. You own nothing. You are nothing without God. So when you get arrogant in life and you say, I did this, this is my achievement, this is my thing, this is my hard work. No, in Irfan, in Islamic Irfan, we call it Hada min fadli Rabbi. This is from the blessing of my Lord. It's not me who did it. It's through the blessing that Allah gave me, and as a result, I was able to accomplish such a thing. So inshallah tonight, we will continue on. That was just a summary. Continue on from this and see what the purpose of understanding the identity clash is, and some examples inshallah as well. So we noticed that Islam tells us the greatest or most foundational moment of our identity is servant and master, which means that any other identity which clashes with that, your foundational one must always override it. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you have a day where your friend, and I gave this example last night as well, you have a friend who invites you to hang out, yeah? He's like, bro, come chill, let's have some good time. Then your mother and father tells you that, listen, we've got relatives coming over, we need you to stay home. So now you're in a conundrum, you don't know what to choose. Do I go visit my friend or do I listen to my mom and dad? And then there's that clash of identities. Or let's say if you're married, and this example was again given last night, that if your friend calls you and then you've got your wife in hospital, your wife calls you, I need help, who do you go to? Do you go to your friend or you go to your wife? I'm hoping that you're going to be that faithful husband and go towards your wife, because your identity of being a husband at that given time is more important than your identity as a person who is known a friend. It doesn't mean you don't value friendship. Of course you value friendship. It's just at that given time, your identity is more important where you call yourself a husband. So going back to this, the Quran looks at it and it gave some examples. Now, one of the most manifested moments of how you can see whether your identity is master and slave is when you read Salat al-Janazah. When you read Salat al-Mayyit for a person who has passed away. And Salat al-Mayyit obviously has 5 takbir. Before you reach the 5th takbir, and I'm not going to say all of it, but just bits of it. Before you reach the 5th takbir, there are certain lines you say in Salat al-Mayyit. What do you say? Because you've got a person who's lying in front of you and you're praying for that dead person. This so-called dead person had so many identities. God knows, he may have been an engineer, he may have been a doctor, he may have been whatever. But now he's lying down in front of you. And in that lines where you say, it's very interesting because now everything's set and everything's done. Now you read these lines, please listen carefully. You say, Allahumma inna hadha al-musajja qaddamana. Ya Allah, this individual is a person who is lying in front of us. Allahumma inna musajjaq ad-damana. This person who is lying in front of us. Now what's his identity? His identity is not Dr. Fulan is lying in front of us or Mr. so on and so forth. No. Allahumma inna musajjaq ad-damana. What's his identity? Abduka wa ibna abdika wa ibna amatik. So this is the identity. Your servant, the son of your servant, and the son of your female servant. In other words, you were a servant, your mom was a servant, your dad was a servant. That's your identity. Abduka wa ibna abdika wa ibna amatik. This is Salat al-Mayyit. I thought you had so many identities. Your arrogance is high as Mount Everest. Yes, thinking you're all this. But Salat al-Mayyit seeks to remind you, all you are is abduka wa ibn abdika wa ibn amatik. You are a servant, or he, the one who is lying, is your servant, Allah, and his father was your servant, and his mother was your servant. That's all you are. So next time you think you're all this, the Salat al-Mayyit is inshallah a reminder. Because us, we like to take pride in our father's name or our mother's name, especially if they're wealthy or so on and so forth. Have you had the moments where somebody tells you, do you know who my dad is? Do you know who you're talking to? Do you know who my father is? Those people who take pride in their mom or dad's name. They say, if you find out who my father is, it's not going to go well for you. Well, your father's main identity is a servant. You're a servant as well. So that's your main identity. They were identities, yes, because this person who is lying in front of me, he had millions of identities. He may have been Afghani, he may have been a doctor, he may have been a brother, he may have been a father. These are all identities. They might not necessarily be bad, but the most fundamental one is what? He is a servant right now in front of his Lord. And then these are the other lines that it mentions. نَزَلَ بِكَ وَأَنْتَ خَيْرٌ مَنْزُلٍ بِهِ. In other words, what matters now is that he's come to you because you are the best person to come towards. Allah is Khaliq and we are Makhluq. Yes? In dua, the whispered munajat of Imam Ali, we say, Mawlaya Mawlaya, Anta al-Khaliq wa ana al-Makhluq. Wa hal yarham al-Makhluq illa al-Khaliq. My master, my master, you are the creator and I am the created. And who else is going to show mercy to the created except for the creator? Which means that if he did well, because he's come to you now, if he's done well, i.e. a good servant, then shower and add to his goodness. Yes? But if he did not do well, that servant who's lying in front of you, and this is the dua that we make on behalf of that person who has deceased. If he did not do well in life, then out of your mercy forgive him. Imagine you're seeing a king, your life is in the hands of that king, and you're begging, saying, "Oh king, I did not do the best, but I hope you have mercy on me because you are the great one or you are the high." So this is exactly the same thing where we pray and we say that, "Oh Allah, if he did good, add to his goodness. If he was not so good, then out of your mercy, forgive the man." Because when a person dies on the Yawm al-Mahshar or the Day of Judgment, what is it that matters? The Quran says it quite beautifully, and I mentioned it at the start of my lecture. فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those who have weighty deeds, these people are victorious. Not those who had cars, not those who had houses, not those who had God knows how many bank accounts or so on. No, no, no. The people, and then فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُ, those with weighty deeds. And then it provides the contrasting one. What's the contrasting one? وَمَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ فِي جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدُونَ. There are those who comes with light scales. Because on the Day of Judgment, you've got your scales. It's either heavy or it's light. If your weighty deeds are not so weighty, then of course Jahannam is what's waiting for you. Remember when I said, because it says, الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسِهِمْ, they lose themselves. Remember I said you lose yourself, and when you lose yourself, when you lose Allah, you lose yourself. The moment you forget God, you forget yourself. And this is exactly what the Quran is talking about. What about the other identities? What about my identity as a doctor in this world? What about my identity as a right winger for my team in this world? What about, for example, my identity as a person who volunteered? Those are identities. On the day of Qiyamah, it says that they will value or be of use to you if they were used to boost your foundational identity. Your foundational identity is what? A servant. So on the Day of Judgment, any deed that you do or any identity that you have that boosts your foundational identity, good job, well done. Anything that doesn't, then you need to think about those identities. What are some examples? This could be, for example, obviously, we all know sadaqah, donating through a trusted organization. That could be one way you can boost your identity. Or in another way you can boost your identity is if you speak out for the oppressed. What's going on in Iran and Gaza right now, you use your social media platform, those who have a lot of followers, let's say on TikTok or Instagram, you use it to seek awareness for the oppressed. That is a way you can boost your identity. You don't get to ask where's the rich person line or where's the right wingers line or where's the Afghani line. Excuse me, on the Day of Judgment, I want to go and visit my Afghan boys. I want to, stand in line and have my weights counted with my boys. It doesn't work like that. Or on the day you ask, for example, where's the Arab line? I want to go with where the Arabs are. That's where I belong. Doesn't exist. Because those are not the identities that matter on that day. The identities which matter on that day. There's this hadith from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in Al-Kafi. He says, on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell his angels to call out, where are my servants who were poor? Faqir, yes? Al-mu'min al-faqir. Where are my poor believing servants? Those people who were tested a lot in this life, who may be tested a lot financially. So for you who are thinking you are struggling financially, just understand this is a test from God. This hadith says that the angels will call out, where, on behalf of Allah, where are my servants who were poor? Through wealth, of course. They will stand up and Allah will say in a manner, not to say that He's literally, in a manner where He's apologizing to them. He's saying to them, listen, I didn't test you with financial hardship because I didn't like you. I tested you so that today in front of everyone I can honor you. You are the most honored in front of everyone. And then they'll say, get up, the doors of heaven are open, you are welcome to go. Before you go though, says a fundamental line, before you go, See anyone around you who has helped you in this world. And if you find someone, take their hand, take them straight to Jannah with you. So inshallah, we are amongst those people who lift each other's hands up and take each other to Jannah. There are, like I said, there are identities, there are categorizations on that day. Might not necessarily be what we subscribe to in today's world, but there are definitely identities, yes? There are, for example, categorizations. The one who gave charity, stand up. Yes, anyone who gives charity in this world, he will stand up on that day. Or for example, they'll say the one who went to Hajj, stand up. Anybody who went to Hajj will stand up. The one, for example, who forgave his family and those who wronged him, that person will stand up. The one who cried for Abu Abdullah, that person will stand up. The one who prayed his prayers on time, that one will stand up. You will understand how much prayer is important on that day. Yes, today we might take it lightly and say my prayer is nothing. But on that day, it's one of the most fundamental things that will boost your resume, we call it, yes? Your weighted deeds. Because Jannah has many doors. It doesn't have just one door. And my favorite door is called Babu Tawbah, the door of repentance. Why? Because the people who enter through this door, their resume is not as impressive. They have messed up a lot in life. They've done a lot of bad things. They may have not prayed on time. They may have lied a lot. They may have, God knows, God forbid, killed someone. They may have done the worst of the worst. But what's important is that he returned back to his Lord and he asked for sincere repentance. This is why we call it Babu Tawbah. So whoever repents, that door is for you. Imagine on the day of judgment, you're standing and you say that I am from amongst those who are the repenters. Because the angel will look at you, I know who you are. All the things you did in this world, I know very much about it. The cruelty you did, whatever. But what's most important on this day is you were a person who repented. So this is Babu Tawbah. So now, what about when my identities clash? Remember, we have a multitude of identities. I can identify as a Muslim, but at the same time, I can identify as an Australian. But which one am I? Am I Australian or am I Muslim? Or am I an Australian Muslim? Or am I a Muslim Australian? We identify in a multitude of identities. And Islam says, listen, you will clash 100% in your life with your identities. So long as they don't clash with your foundational identity, go on, go do it. It's fine, no problem. And most of the time it won't clash. And the best example I can give you is, let's say you get a position at work. You get a promotion position at work, and they tell you that, listen, the pay is going to be increased, you're going to be making this much salary. Then you realize, listen, I've got a good pay, but I'm working a lot more. And my working a lot more reduces my family time. Especially if you're a father, you spend time less with your kids. You don't spend as much time. This is where the identities clash. And Islam says, no, this is not what you're meant to be doing. Why? Because your identity of a servant of God who is faithful to his family, who is faithful to his children, must be prioritized over your job. Or for example, let's say you have a friend who tells you to engage in haram, and you, of course, value your identity as a servant of God. He says, look, it's just a puff, bro. Who's gonna care? It's just a puff. It's nothing big. This moment you consider yourself. You say, listen, do I consider my identity of a friend important, or do I consider my identity as a servant of God as being more important? Remember what I said, your foundational identity always overrides any other identity. Otherwise, other times I can do a lot for my friend. Yes, I can still be that loyal friend. Someone might turn around and say, look, I hear you say it, but I am an Australian. What do you mean I'm an Australian? He says, look, I'm going to use kilograms instead of pounds when I do my measurements. Yeah? So you know how people weigh in pounds instead of kilograms? No problem. Yeah? People might think that it's common, but if a person uses pounds instead of kilograms, is that problematic? No, not at all. The identities are clash, but it doesn't clash with your foundational identity. Islam says it's fine. You can still use pounds, or you can use kilograms or whatever. It's not a big deal. who says, listen, I am an Afghan. And part of my identity as being an Afghan, that I have to eat rice or birinj with almost everything. And it's got to have a lot of meat and korma with it. If it doesn't have korma with it, then my identity as an Afghan doesn't work. Yeah? Whether it's qabli palau, whether it's biryani, whatever it is, I identify as an Afghan. And it has to have rice in it. Islam says, listen, so long as you can consider your weight and you don't become 250 pounds, no problem, have at it. It doesn't clash with your identity as a servant of God. Yes? Then, for example, in Australia, this is a very important one. As an Australian, let's say you consume certain products from which country or companies, which are manufacturers, they, as part of their allegiance, pay a bit of it to a resistance or an organization that funds the genocide of children. In other words, when I consume something from a shop, they pay a part of how much I pay them to an organization that commits in genocide, current day Palestine. Then Islam says, listen, this is where you have to take a step back. Yes, you love your stomach, you love your eating, but you need to understand that this is not foundational for your identity as a servant of God. What's your identity? To look after the oppressed. By you buying that product, you are indeed committing the murder of that child. So this is where the identities clash, and you need to know when to say no. To finally conclude, one of the most famous examples of an identity clash is a NBA basketballer by the name of Chris Jackson. I don't know if you guys know him, but Chris Jackson was an interesting case. Chris Jackson was a baller in the NBA in the 1990s. He was drafted third, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1990 NBA draft. He is the person where your modern day Steph Currys are inspired through your swerve or finesse shots, yeah? So this guy was really, really good at the start. He was a sharpshooter and he was highly respected within the NBA league. Now, he's improving throughout his career. He's improving rapidly. The money is coming. The fame is coming. He's an absolute superstar within NBA. And in 1993, he gets the most improved player in the NBA. But also in 1993, he makes a very fundamental decision in his life. He converts to the religion of Islam. And part of converting, your identity becomes a Muslim. Remember, servant and God. So when he converts, he changes his name to Muhammad Abdul Rauf, from Christopher Jackson or Chris Jackson to Muhammad Abdul Rauf. And then there's an interesting twist in his story. What happens? Now, as part of his Muslim identity, every time they play the national anthem of America, he doesn't stand up. And they're just wondering, Chris, it's the national anthem, you need to get up. He doesn't stand up. And when they asked him, they said, look, the flag which I'm standing up for has a lot of shady stuff that it's done behind. So I cannot, because it conflicts with my identity. He faced a lot of backlash because of this. He faced a lot of backlash. And in the end, they went to agreements. They're like, listen, if you're not going to stand up for it, look, if you're not going to attend it or you don't agree, at least just close your eyes and just sing it. Sing the national anthem. He said, no, I can't do that. He faced a lot of backlash. And in the end, until he was sidelined. He had so much talent. He had so much money. He had so much fame. But because of this particular stance of his, he was sidelined. His game time was reduced. And his career was lost. To Muhammad Abdul Rauf, to any other person, this could be the worst decision a person could make. But to Muhammad Abdul Rauf or Christopher Jackson, it was the best decision. Why? Because to him, he was more as an identity, as Abdul Rauf, which literally means the servant of the high, compared to a random average NBA player. That's what it was. And finally, to finish up, the greatest example, one of the greatest examples of a person who truly maintains his foundational identity is none other than Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. Abu Dhar al-Ghafari was a companion of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the Holy Prophet. Abu Dhar al-Ghafari was there throughout the early years of Islam. Yes, he saw everything through thick and thin. He was there with Rasulullah and with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Abu Dhar, towards the end of his life, he notices that the third caliph, Uthman bin Affan, there's a lot of nepotism in his government. In Uthman bin Affan's government, there is a lot of people where they are deviating from the religion. Uthman's decisions are causing a lot of people to become angry with him. His governors are people who the lay public are not happy with. We don't have enough time to get through the detail of what type these governors were, but suffice for me to say that these people were not upon the religion of Islam. So Abu Dhar al-Ghafari stands up because the Baytul Mal, or the public treasury of the Muslims, was being looted by these governors. Abu Dhar stood up and he said, "What are you doing? You are the Khalifa of the Muslims and you cause such fitna, you put such people in charge who take the money of the Muslims unlawfully." He said, "I stand against this." He made it quite clear because his identity as a servant of God was A, fighting for the oppressed, standing for justice, and saying no to oppression. So what happened? Uthman said, "Listen, I'm going to send you to my cousin in Syria, Muawiyah." So he sends him to Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. Every single day, Abu Dhar stands in front of the Umayyad palace and he quotes the surah of Quran, "Those who hoard the gold and the silver, those who hoard the gold and the silver in the way, and they do not give it to the Muslims." Until Muawiyah had enough and they said, "Listen, this guy's a headache. Uthman, take him back." Uthman eventually took him back and he still would continue, "Those who hoard the gold and the silver." Because to Abu Dhar, his identity as a Muslim or a servant of God was higher. In the end, he was exiled into the Rabada desert, where he died alone with his family out of starvation and hunger. Where Rasulullah had said about Abu Dhar, imagine the Holy Prophet says such lines about you. He said, "Abu Dhar, the eyes have not seen and the skies have not shaded a person who is as honest as Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. And yet this person dies hungry in the Rabada desert." Inshallah, we try to understand and learn from the lessons of Abu Dhar and all these to be able to build this Islamic identity. And I'll conclude, inshallah, may Allah give us the tawfiq to able to maintain our Islamic identity and become servants of Allah and inshallah gain more ma'rifat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.